his threat from that right-hand side is immense. So what you need to do to get the best out of that is to have another player there that can occupy defenders' attention as well. So yeah, he's a 23-year-old left-footed right winger that is in a very, very similar mold to Riyad Mahrez. It's almost a carbon copy of the player. Will just be that for Liverpool. He'll be a good player for Liverpool. He's not going to break records. He's not going to be their best player. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the 2 Footer Tackle podcast. I'm your host, Ari Stamatakos. We're back again for episode 18 of season 2. Second episode back after the World Cup, getting back into the swing of the weekly shows, which is nice. I hope everyone's well. Obviously, no Premier League action in terms of on the weekend. We had FA Cup action, which was good. We won't touch on that too in depth. If we do have time towards the end, we'll speak on it. Premier League was, of course, throughout midweek, which was great. Fixture congestion is getting really, really bad as well. I feel sorry for some of the players, in all honesty, but yeah, it is one of those things. Which, I mean, if you go back and watch last week's episode, you'll see my thoughts on the fixture congestion and what that might cause. But no, we're back again. There was, of course, no Premier League action, FA Cup action over the weekend, but all the other leagues returned as well. So you had the return of the Serie A, which was good over the most recent weekend, which was good to see. And we have obviously returned with La Liga. I'm pretty sure. I don't think La Liga was on throughout last week. Oh no, it was. It did return on Boxing Day, which was cool. And I think Bundesliga is still on hiatus, if I'm not mistaken. It is. And so are some other leagues. France is still going with their cup competition as well, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, there is football slowly returning back to normal. Of course, we're getting back into the swing of things, and as you can tell by the title, because football is getting back to normal, we must speak about transfers and we must speak about all the non-footballing things that could occur that could occur over this next month, which is shaping up to be a pretty interesting month. Of course, a lot of teams needing reinforcements in some areas. Potentially one of the most hyped January transfer windows in a long time. Of course, it's 9 days in. No big signings have gone over the line yet, but a lot of people are linked. A lot of big, high-profile people are linked. So, as you can tell by the title, we're going to be touching on the top 6 clubs and who they should sign. We'll go in a little bit more detail once I get through this intro stuff and get through all the pleasantries, which I am obliged to do before every episode, or before the start, or during the start of every episode. But yeah, that's what we're going to be speaking about today. Of course, you can tell by the title says that's pretty much on the tin. It's going to speak about the A-League as well for a bit, and if time allows me to, I'll speak about Chelsea as well. I don't know how long I'm going to speak about the January stuff for, but if we've got time towards the end, we will speak about Chelsea, which is going to be great. I really don't want to do it, so I might just stretch out the January bit as much as possible. But no, I hope everyone's well. I hope everyone is well. I hope the new year has treated them nicely. The whole festive period, New Year's period is. I think it's over now. I think Monday. It's currently Monday, the 9th of Jan. I think Christmas has been done. New Year's done. It's a new year. Everyone's back to work. Back to getting into the swing of things. And yeah, hopefully this podcast can restore some kind of old habits that some people had with a commute to work, etc. So yeah, I hope everyone's well. That's the main thing. And before I start, once again, all the socials, giving him a follow, giving him a share, giving him some love would mean the world. 2 Footer Tackle podcast on both TikTok and Instagram, 2FTPod on Twitter. 2FTPod on Twitter, and of course all the audio platforms as well would mean the world. Google and Apple Podcast, Anchor, and Spotify. All that good stuff. Okay, let's move on. Let's actually crack into things, shall we? And let's stop wasting time and stalling. Let's get on to the big 6 Premier League January transfer window signings. Who should they sign? So obviously we're going to be touching on the big 6. I was going to do all 20 clubs, and then I thought I don't have the time, or I don't have the time to go through all 20 clubs, and I did this on really short notice, so I should probably have maybe started preparing this maybe in a week in advance in order to get through all 20 clubs. But no, we're going to go with the big six. So I want to speak about the six in detail. We're going to go through each club and have a look at what they need and etc. etc. So we'll be touching on all six of the obviously United, City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham, and we're not going to be going through some of these signings. I've got them all down here, of course. Some of these signings aren't the big names. I'll put it that way. So before I start, I want to preface the players I'm about to suggest by saying there's not going to be many big names in this. Actually, there really isn't that many big names. Like, spoiler alert, there's no Rafael Leao. There's no Jude Bellingham. There's no Enzo Fernandez, right? There's none of these players, because while Jude might get done, while Enzo Fernandez is probably all but confirmed to be a Chelsea player, while Rafael Leao is being thrown apart, while Kvitska Kvaratskhelia from Napoli, Kvaratskhelia, I think that's how you pronounce his name, while he's been thrown around, these guys, they're big money transfers, right? So the likelihood of them getting done in January is not great. So I've gone with signings for each club that have at least some potential to go through. These aren't based on links. These aren't based on who will go, who might go, who's transfer listed, who wants to leave the club. I've just gone through what each team needs, in my opinion, and what each team needs and what could be there on the market. So I've gone. Where should we start? Should we start with the club that gave me the most grief when trying to figure this out? Obviously, spoiler, that was Man City. Because do Man City need a signing? Like, do they really need another signing? So that gave me quite a bit of grief. So yeah, let's start with City. Let's get City out of the way, because let's be honest, they don't really need a signing. Man City don't really need a signing. I mean, if you look at their squad, it is pretty much complete in a sense. Of course, when you look at it, centre halves or goalkeeper wise, I think they're fine. Centre half wise, I think they're okay. I think they're more than they got more than comfortable stocks in that department. Right back, I think Rico Lewis or Nico Lewis. He played against Chelsea. I know that. He's come in and has been a fantastic player for them in recent times as well. Pretty sure he's a right-sided fullback as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Rico Lewis. He of course is a fantastic right back. Left back, yeah, that was an area which I was looking at for left back. Similarly in midfield, I think maybe with Ilkay Gundogan aging slightly, Bernardo Silva's future not really certain. I was looking at potentially some replacements in midfield, and then maybe left wing as well. Was looking at some replacements. Striker, they're fine. And that left me with a right winger. Now, this obviously is a little bit weird maybe, because when you look at City, they don't really need any attacking players. But I was looking at the age profile in particular of their attackers, and yeah, Phil Foden and Jack Grealish, who are players that do like to play on the left-hand side quite a lot. Of course, Jack Grealish is more of your inside wing, inverted winger type player. He's a player that likes to start wide and then come inside using his right foot, using his very good close control. Whereas Phil Foden likes to play on the left and really stick to that left-hand side. He's really a left winger who can really dominate games from that left side, being a more traditional winger in a sense. And then apart from that, when you look at wingers, of course, Bernardo Silva has played on the right-hand side before, but he's moved into a slightly more central role. They against Chelsea in the league, they played this weird formation with João Cancelo playing as like a right winger. So that left me with a right winger. Now, you could have, like I said, I could have gone with someone like a Kvaratskhelia from Napoli, but he is a player that probably won't leave Napoli this January transfer window. Too expensive. The logistics of it wise probably won't happen. Napoli are in a title race, or in a title, and they're in a position where they can challenge for the title. So letting go of arguably one of the better players probably isn't something that they're going to do, right? Especially in such a crunch period of the season. So I went around Europe, looked at the World Cup, and thought, what are some young, bright right wingers that can come in and improve this Man City team? And the reason why I've gone with a right winger is because apart from Riyad Mahrez, I don't really see a player who can stick to that right-hand side and really dominate from there in terms of right now. Of course, Riyad Mahrez obviously came to City after his fantastic spell at Leicester, obviously winning the league there, winning player of the years there. He has come into the City team and has been exceptional. I think he's actually been one of the most underrated players in terms of from when he went to City to now. He's been one of the most underrated players in the Prem. I think he's been fantastic for City, but he's going to be 32 at the end of this season. And how long does he have left? Who knows? Of course, his game does rely on pace, maybe not pace, but explosiveness, agility, good close control, and whether or not that will diminish with age, who knows? So I've gone with someone who is in a very, very similar mould to Riyad Mahrez. I've gone with a right winger who's left-footed, who likes to hug the touchline and then come inside. And he made his name. He made his name in a sense, or he was pushed into the public eye throughout the Euros last season and throughout the World Cup as well. Throughout the World Cup at the back end of last year, and that is the Danish sensation, that is Andreas Skov-Olsen. Now, Skov-Olsen, what you have with Andreas Skov-Olsen is obviously he's a 23-year-old right winger, left-footed right winger, I should say. Yeah, he's a 23-year-old left-footed right winger that is in a very, very similar mold to Riyad Mahrez. It's almost a carbon copy of the player. Literally, right-sided, left-footed, dazzling feet, can use his agility to get past players, and has a playmaking ability that is direct. It's weird. The way he plays is quite weird because it's direct, but it's also he's not like a Salah type winger where he pushes on in behind the defense, looks to get into central positions, and looks to penetrate the 18-yard box that way. He likes to stick wide, maintain the width, and almost maintain a slightly more defensive shape. And I'll bring up his average positions in just a moment, but he occupies a slightly more defensive shape initially before then running forward and almost creating like an L. Almost running in an L way where he runs and then he almost stops and then cuts inside. That, of course, he uses his quick feet and his pace for that. Cuts inside onto his left foot and impacts plays and looks to influence in the final third that way. From 13 starts so far this season, he's got 6 goals and 3 assists for his club side, Club Brugge in Belgium. And if we bring up his average positions here, I think this tells a very good story in terms of the way that he can come in and impact Manchester City. Now, we saw in the game against Chelsea in the league, they played with a way that had emphasis on maintaining width. And they did that through João Cancelo and Phil Foden on the left-hand side. Now, what Skov-Olsen can come in and do is maintain that width, like you see there, but also maintain it in a slightly more defensive position in the initial stages of build-up play and, of course, in when City have possession. Because he's comfortable both with the ball at his feet and also being able to play these intrinsic one-touch passes because, of course, he's massively needed in the Pep Guardiola system. He has the ability to drop deep, get involved in build-up play, be slightly more impactful in that sense before then bursting forward and then creating that, like I said, that L shape, if we bring it up here again, that L shape kind of run inside the box where he can penetrate just outside the 18-yard box, maybe 20 yards out from goal, running from the right-hand side into those half spaces and then either get a shot off, get a pass, or even a cross with his left foot. The way that City will look to play in the future, of course, Pep Guardiola. Now, something which I was looking at when looking at who City should sign is the future of Pep Guardiola. Because Pep Guardiola, whilst being very unique, he's also, whilst obviously inspiring, I think is a good word, whilst inspiring the next generation of coaches to basically play the same way that he does, just in a slightly different way with different nuances, etc. He's very unique. In the way that he goes about things, he's very, very unique. So you need to be able to cater certain signings for certain managers. And, of course, Pep Guardiola's future is uncertain. I think he may have signed a contract extension. I'm not quite sure if I remember that or that was a fever dream. But contract extensions in football from players to managers are fake, let's be honest. If he wants to retire at the end of the season, he'll retire, right? It doesn't really matter. So I was looking at it from that perspective, and I was looking at it from once Pep leaves, whatever manager's going to come in, how they're going to use this player. And I think Skov Olsen is very malleable in a sense because he's still young. He's still only 23, right? He's still only 23, and he hasn't had his ability to cement himself in terms of cement himself as the player, as his player, if that makes sense. He isn't the finished product by any means, which means if Pep gets his hands on him, he can change him, and because obviously he's still young, very malleable, can change and can be very versatile in the way that he plays. Because he's still young and because he's obviously he's a player that has experience at the high level, World Cups, Euros, whilst also not playing at a big club, he has that experience of the pressure scenarios of those big games, whilst also not being under that much pressure every single week for his club, in a sense. So if he can go to a Pep Guardiola coach team, and if he can go to a Pep Guardiola coach team, and Pep can teach him the nuances of playing a certain position, and can also teach him ways of impacting games in different ways, that of course that will just elevate his game tenfold, and that will make the purchase of him in 5, 6, 7 years time look like a stroke of genius, because of course the profit, the potential profit at least, that could come from a signing like this, if Pep Guardiola gets his hands on him and can change him and make him versatile in both his positionally wise, but also tactically, then of course then that'll be like a stroke of genius. So for Man City, I've gone with Andreas Skov Olsen. Now the permutations of this signing is I wouldn't say unknown, but it's not exactly cheap, put it that way. He, of course, he's one of the most brightest young talents in Europe. He's contracted until 2026, so he's got some time left on his contract, but he's by any means not locked down for life at Club Brugge. He did only make a 7 million euro move to Club Brugge in January of last year. So he, of course, he's actually one of, I think, 3 players on this list that I've got who've only been at their clubs 12 months. But when Man City come calling, I don't think that you can turn that down. And I don't think Club Brugge are in a position to turn that down either. I'm not quite sure where they are in the league. I'll quickly check that. Club Brugge are currently 4th in the league. They are 15 points. They're 15 points off top of Genk, who are top of the table. So if Man City come calling with a 30, 40, 45 million pound bid for Skov Olsen, granted he's been their best player. I mean, SofaScore has him as their highest rated player this season. If Man City come calling with 35, 45 million pound bid, that's potentially money that Club Brugge can't turn down. And of course, Skov Olsen, I assume he's a player with high ambition, moving to one of the best clubs, if not the best club side in the world, playing under one of, if not the best managers in the world, alongside some of, if not the best players in the world. I think it's a hard thing to turn down from both parties. So looking at it from that perspective, for Man City, I've gone with Andreas Skov Olsen. However, we're looking at other potential positions. Like I said, centre mid, potentially with the sale of Bernardo Silva imminent to Barcelona, potentially, as well as Okay Gundogan's aging profile. That, of course, is an area where they could look to strengthen. And of course, left back. Apart from João Cancelo, I don't really think they've got enough stocks in that left back department, especially defensively. That can be caught out slightly in that realm. But yeah, I don't think they're going to get the likes of Rafael Leao or Kvaratskhelia through the door in January. I just think that's unreasonable at this moment, especially where both sides are. Napoli in a title challenge and AC Milan looking to defend their Serie A throne. I don't think it's reasonable to pin they must sign this player in this window, because I just don't think it's reasonable. However, when we look at it in terms of the summer, they're 2 potential players that they could go and get. But yeah, for Man City, I've gone with Andreas Skov Olsen for them. I think he'll be a very shrewd signing if they can get their hands on him, especially in a January transfer window where like I said, I don't think the big names are gonna be players which I'd suggest. Yeah, so players along the likes of Andreas Skov Olsen will be who I'll be looking at for the rest of the teams. But yeah, like I said, I wanted to start with City because they probably gave me the most grief when looking at which players should go to each team, because like I said, they don't really need anyone. I literally could have come on this podcast and said, Man City, literally no one. Recall from Lone Land the lapped. I think that's probably what I could have said, because they just don't need anyone, which is quite insane to think about when they're not even top of the league. But let's move. Should we stay in Manchester? Let's stay in Manchester. Let's do this via. Let's do it via that means. Let's stay in Manchester and let's go to Manchester United now. Wow, where do we start with United, right? Because I was having this conversation with a few different people over the last couple of weeks, and that of course regarding the sale of Cristiano, or the termination of Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, of course, you don't get any money directly for him. You don't get a transfer fee or what have you. But what you do get is £500,000 a week off the wage bill, which is quite a lot of money. And what you can do with that is that arguably you can spend that on 2 to 3 pretty good players. I wouldn't say world-class players, but 2 to 3 pretty good players. Now, when we look at the profile that United need, let's go through their squad. I think goalkeeper, once again, is a position where they could potentially strengthen, but I don't think it's a necessity right now. Left back, I think they're fine for now. Centre back, same. Right back, I do think that they do need a right back. I do think that they do need a right back, especially considering Diogo Dalot is carrying a heavy burden on his shoulders, especially in the back half of this season. I think that's an area where they're going to strengthen, look to bring in a bona fide superstar in that position. I don't think it's going to be in the January period, though. I think they can get away with having Wan-Bissaka and Dalot for the next 4 or 5 months. Midfield, I do think they need a midfielder. I don't think Christian Eriksen is the answer, but once again, I think they can get away with it for another 6 months. And the front line behind the striker, I think is okay once again, and it's the striker position which I've landed on. Now, of course, I've woken up to the news that Manchester United are very interested in Wout Weghorst, and Erik ten Hag sees Wout Weghorst as a necessity. He thinks that he ticks all the boxes for his Manchester United side and for his project, and that I don't necessarily entirely disagree with, because of course when you look at the way that Ten Hag played with his Ajax team, it was built off, especially in his last season, it was built off Sebastian Haller, who is in a very similar mold to Weghorst, a big striker, good in the air, can hold the ball up whilst also being capable with the ball at his feet. So I agree in a sense that the profile of player for the system is similar enough for it to be a good signing. But when I look at Weghorst, I just think, is he a difference maker? Is he a player that can come in and make a difference, both off the bench and starting? He isn't versatile. He can't play anywhere other than a striker position, so he is not malleable in any sense. I think it's an okay signing, and he'll of course come on a cheap, so that of course is not an issue. Of course, he has that relationship, that Dutch relationship with the coach, so that should come in and do him a world of good. But I was looking at a couple of players that could come in for United and offer a little bit in terms of I wouldn't say maybe difference, but versatility whilst also having an impact. And when you look at this United team, they've gone with Martial, Rashford up front. Apart from that, they don't really have any other players who can do that job to a pretty good level. When we look at their most recent game against Everton in the Cup, they started with Martial up front. When we look at their game against Bournemouth, they started with Martial again. When we look at their game against Wolves, they started with Martial again. When we look at their game against Forest, they started with Martial. He scored 1 goal in those 4 games, right? That game came against Forest, so he hasn't scored in his last 3 games. And even in the AFL Cup game after or before that, Martial started. So since they've returned from the World Cup, they've started Martial up front. He scored 2 goals in 5 games, and hasn't really set the world alight. So what Martial is a number 9 that has kind of been pushed in and out of position that has knocked his confidence, and that has put him in a mindset of he kind of needs to do everything, or he feels like he needs to do everything in order to prove himself. So what you need is a player who can come in, who's on a good run of form for his club, who can carry that confidence with him, can move into that striker position, can offer both very good technical ability, who can carry the ball and who can progress the ball forward, whilst also being a very, very good finisher. Now, I was looking. My eyes immediately went to a couple of people, but I landed on one man who has been floated around for quite a while. His contract is running up in the summer, so he's got 6 months left on his contract, and I don't think he's going to be renewing it anytime soon. I'm of course talking about the Borussia Mönchengladbach player Marcus Thuram. Now, he, of course, was given the responsibility by Didier Deschamps of coming in to that World Cup side, that World Cup final side, I should say, in the first half where he made two changes, and he performed very well in that final. I think there's a reason why Didier Deschamps chose to trust. I think there's a reason why Deschamps chose to trust Thuram in that scenario, because he was on a fantastic spell of form for Borussia Mönchengladbach prior, and he's continued that. He's got 10 goals and 3 assists from 15 games in the league. He's 25 years old, so he's still got some time to grow and can change and can adapt to a Ten Hag system. He's a striker by trade, if you want to call him that, but he can also float off the left-hand side. He's a good poacher in the box. He's a pretty good finisher, but he can also move out to the left and carry the ball forward, use his physicality, use his pace to influence in the final third that way. He's not just a goal scorer. He can create as well. And I think he's a pretty good player to come into this side. He can come into this side straight away and have an instant impact. If we go and take a look at let's take a look at his FB ref. Let's take a look at his FB ref now. So we haven't touched on FB ref in quite a while, but once again, like I said, take these with a grain of salt, because they of course are per 90 stats taken over the last calendar year, so not league season, the whole calendar year. But once again, take these stats with a grain of salt, of course. But what we can see here is we can see a very good finisher. 0.61 non-penalty expected goals per 90, ranking in the 96th percentile. Non-penalty expected goals plus expected assists, ranking in the 70, or 0.74 per 90, ranking in the 93rd percentile. Now, what that means is he has impact, or he at least shows that he could have impact, which is something that United need. They just need signs of, because what United's season has been, and this is something which I wanted to touch on when I spoke about Thuram. What United's season has been, and what it was potentially always going to be, was almost like a progression season, but a promise-filled season. There's promise, or there's glimpses of this player playing well. There's glimpses of this system playing well, and that is what a player like Thuram can come into and can continue providing those glimpses whilst also penetrating the scoreboard in a sense, and also having an impact. He's one of those players that will just slot into this system, keep doing what the rest of the team are doing, whilst also having an actual tangible impact on the scoreboard, because that's what he's done for his club side already so far. Like I said, I think it was 15 goal contributions in 13 games? No, 13 goal contributions in 15 games. So he's come in, he's had a very good season for his club, and he will come in and just be a very, very good presence, both in the box and whilst carrying the ball. So we look at those non-penalty expected goals, whatever. Those stats are great. That shows that he's a very good finisher, that he gets into the right areas to get good high percentage chances at goal. He gets into those good positions, which is a great start. However, what my mind was immediately attracted to was that 1.71 dribbles completed per 90, which ranks in the 94th percentile. This is in comparison to other forwards in the league. Now, the way FB Ref, I think this is a very interesting stat, and something which you need to have caveated in a sense. What FB Ref categorizes as a forward is strikers and centre forwards. So the way that FB Ref kind of divide positions is through fullbacks, centre backs, midfielders as a whole, attacking mids / wingers, and forwards. So he's been compared to other strikers in the world, and in the top 5 leagues, I should say, and he ranks in the 94th percentile for dribbles completed. This also takes into account forwards that are like wingers that play striker. So if I'm not mistaken, I think someone like a Sadio Mane or like a Mohamed Salah are categorized or could be categorized as forwards. Marcus Thuram, of course a slightly different player to both of them. They both play all three of them play in a pretty similar way in terms of they're very direct. But the fact that he can have 1.71 dribbles completed per 90 as a forward, and that ranking very high, shows that he has the ability to whilst also playing off the left. Now I probably should have checked this before, but let's look at where he's last been played in some of his games, right? Because this is going to be very interesting to see, because the way United obviously play is fluid. It's very, you play up front, but you also drift out onto the left. You play on the left, but you make runs inside and you play up front. So what Thuram offers is can do both of them. He can start up front and drift out to the left, but he can start on the left and make plays and make runs into the final third and penetrate the 18-yard box. He's a very good dribbler, like we just said. He's a very good dribbler, like we just said. He's a very good goal scorer, like we've just said. He creates high percentage chances for himself, and he takes them more often than not. So and he can also create high percentage chances as well. He's a player that can come into this United side and just give them that extra 0.7 goals a game, which will take them and which will transform these 1-1 draws away at Crystal Palace into a 2-1 win. He's that type of player, which is something that this United side, in a position of transition where results aren't the only thing, results aren't the most important thing that matters, but it certainly matters. They need to get results because they need to get into Europe. They probably need to get into the Champions League to attract these high-quality players that Ten Hag will want to complete the rebuild with. Thuram can come into this side. He's still only 25. You'll get him either on a cheap in January because his contract only has 6 months to go. You'll either get him on a cheap in January or you'll get him for free in the summer. He'll come in, give you that 0.7 goals a game, more than what you already have, and we'll just get you across the line in these games to get you those results, to push you up the ladder, to push you up the league table, and to push you back to where you want to be. If we bring up his average positions here, this shows quite an interesting way of the way he goes about things, right? Because he, like I said, that left half space is where he likes to do most of his work deep, but then he goes into the box and occupies those central areas to get those shots off, to get those high percentage chances off. When we look at the way United play, that's not it. There we go, that's it. The stream that confused me for a second. When we look at the way United play, and when we look at the assets that United have, their main forward asset, in my opinion, is Anthony. Anthony on that right-hand side is their main forward asset. The way you get the best out of Anthony is by giving him loads of space to be one-on-one and isolate him with his defender, because he's incredibly quick, incredibly agile, has got brilliant technical ability, and can dribble past players for days. That's where he does his best work. So what you have with Thuram is you have a very physical, dominant presence on the left-hand side who will attract defenders to him and will drag defenders across, because not only does he have the ability to make those third-man runs into the box and impact in the final third and impact in the 18-yard box, but it can also collect the ball from deep and drive at the opposition. This creates a double-edged sword of threats that can twist the defence and can make them think about two things, which leaves Anthony wide open on the other side because they're so focused on Thuram on the left. Because he's so dominant in two areas of the pitch, it will give Anthony a lot of space to do his best work. I think these two can complement each other brilliantly. Not necessarily as a winger partnership, but if Thuram plays up front and can drift out to the left and allow Marcus Rashford to come inside and get those runs in behind, isolate the fullback on that side and get those runs in behind, then that will give space for Anthony on the right-hand side to do the business. That, of course, gives freedom to Bruno Fernandes because defenders are being dragged all over the place because they have to make sure that Anthony's covered, whilst also marking the run of Marcus Rashford, who's making that late running behind the defence, whilst also picking up Thuram, because if he picks up the ball and drives at the defence, he's very difficult to stop. It will be a very, very dangerous front three if Thuram can be put into this United side and he can continue on the form that he's currently producing for his club side in Germany. I think it would be a very, very shrewd business decision to get Thuram, and because he's got 6 months left on his deal, I think it could be something that United need to look at. I think it's something that United can look at and can really kind of take off their potential top four rivals in a sense, and give them that point of difference. I just think Marcus Thuram is a player that that can really, really be a difference if you bring up his FB ref once again. You can just see all the points backed up by the stats there. Touches in the attacking penalty area as well, 6.36. So he's able to get himself into good positions to receive the ball both at feet, whilst also dropping in and collecting the ball as well. So, I think Marcus Thuram is a player that United should definitely be looking at. Definitely be looking at, because it would be a player that everyone kind of expects to take that next level because of what we saw at the World Cup, but hasn't had that ability to take that next level. And I think going to this United side under Ten Hag is definitely that chance for him to take that next level, or to elevate himself to the next level and really take that game, and progress his game and help United get back to the Champions League where they should be and potentially are on a collision course with for next season. So yeah, I hope that cleared. I hope that like made sense in terms of what I think Thuram can offer, because the way Ten Hag wants to play is quite nuanced. It's quite nuanced. So you need intelligent players, and I think Thuram, whilst Thuram isn't the reincarnation of Andreas Iniesta, I think he's an intelligent enough player to kind of to understand what Ten Hag wants, and to kind of adapt himself to play that way. To kind of understand the way that Ten Hag wants to play. I feel like Thuram can do that in a sense, and can do that quite well. So we'll go Marcus Thuram. I actually thought it was funny. I literally wrote down Lilian Thuram on my run sheet, so I was literally about to say that, but I was like, no, that's his dad. That's his World Cup winning dad. I'm pretty sure 98. He won the World Cup in 98. I'm pretty sure. He was a good player, apparently. I didn't say him. So, I mean, I can't say that I did. So, I'm going to say, I'm assuming, and I'm taking other people's advice that Lilian Thuram was a very, very good player. But anyway, that's by the by, besides the point. Let's move on. Let's go... How should we move on to this? Let's go from United. Let's just move slightly down the country. Let's go to Liverpool. Let's go from rival to rival to rival. Let's go to Merseyside, and let's go to Liverpool, who are in a position where they need fixing ASAP. And obviously, the man that Liverpool are probably going to get is Jude Bellingham. So I'm not going to throw up Jude Bellingham to be Liverpool's signing for January, because that's very, very lazy, and he's probably all but going to happen. And all the analysis is there of him, so that's just lazy. In saying that, what I have done is also very lazy in its own right, because the player that I've thrown up for Liverpool is Lovren Mayer. Now, for those who have a good memory, you will know that I mentioned Lovren Mayer to be Liverpool's signing in the last summer transfer window. That's not right. So for those who have a good memory, and for those who have a good memory, and for those who are long-time viewers of this podcast, you'll know that I actually brought up Lovren Mayer 6 months ago. In the off season, in the big summer transfer window. Why can't I speak all of a sudden? So for those who have a good memory, if I can speak and get my points across, that would be great. For those who have a good memory, and for those who are avid listeners of this podcast, you will know that Lovren Mayer has been on my radar for quite a while. And you will know that because I actually mentioned Lovren Mayer to be Liverpool's signing for the last transfer window, the big off-season transfer window. I said that Liverpool should go and get Lovren Mayer. Now, since then, he is, of course, featured in the World Cup for Croatia. He was a pretty, I wouldn't say big part for Croatia, but he did definitely make an impact in Qatar for Croatia as they reached the semi-finals. So I think Lovren Mayer, how he hasn't been picked up from Stade de Rennes, I don't know. I think he's a talented, super talented player. Super talented player. I flagged him 6 months ago for Liverpool. I said they need to get him. He would I wouldn't say single-handedly fix their problems, but he would come into this side and give them a different dynamic that you know what, Naby Keita potentially should give them, but he doesn't. He's a better version of Naby Keita, and that's literally the exact same comparison that I flagged 5 months ago. He'll come into this side and play on the right-hand side of that midfield three. He's left-footed. Now, what this allows is it allows for dynamics. It allows for two different dynamics to be had in that midfield. And this is something that's very, very important when you look at Liverpool, because the way Liverpool are playing is very different to what they played last season and what they played for seasons before. Liverpool. Liverpool have played for the longest time a midfield three that is very, very industrious. When we look at the side that won the Champions League, when we look at the side that won the league, Henderson, Fabinho, Wijnaldum. They're the three really that spring to my mind when I think of prime Liverpool in this era, their midfield. Very industrious, very workmanlike, very getting your job done, giving the ball to the more talented players. Now, Klopp has changed that to a certain extent. He's changed the way that Liverpool are playing in order to get more out of their midfield players. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that they should go back to the way that they were playing because it's worked for them for the longest time, having that more industrious midfield. But I can't go against the facts. That's what Klopp is doing. So when we look at potential midfield signings, Jude Bellingham, in my opinion, is the obvious one. He's a more workman-like midfielder than someone like a Lovren because he's slightly more physical, slightly taller, can do a little bit more defensive grunt work than Lovren, and is a player that will just run all day. Whereas Lovren, especially in possession, is... While Lovren is a very tenacious, hard-working footballer, he's a little bit more creative and a little bit more elegant, especially when he has the ball, in a sense. What he will do in this system is that he will play on the right-hand side of that midfield three, assuming that they continue with a 4-3-3 and don't move to a 4-2-3-1. If they do move to a 4-2-3-1, he can play as a number 10 and he'll do a very, very good job there as well. And you know what? He can also play as a double pivot in slightly more high possession games. A midfield double pivot of someone like Fabinho and Maya, giving some players rotation, that will be very good because Maya can sit deep and can dictate tempo as well, whilst also playing a slightly more advanced number 8 position, breaking into the final third, etc., etc. But on the right-hand side, what Lovren will do in this 4-3-3 system is that he'll play on the right-hand side of this midfield three. He's a left footer. So what that allows as a left footer is that when you look at Liverpool's biggest weapon, it's Trent. When Trent is on, he's on. Like his delivery, his threat from that right-hand side is immense. So what you need to do to get the best out of that is to have another player there that can occupy defenders' attention as well. Because one's right-footed, one's left-footed, and because both are very good enough, technically capable to either play in the half space or hug the touchline, it creates this kind of... I don't know what that is, but I feel like that kind of gets my point across quite well. Maya can come inside and get into those half spaces, and then that allows Trent to move out wide. Or Trent can make those inverted runs into the half space, and Lovren Maya can hug the touchline and pick up the ball and then whipping crosses with his left after cutting inside. Because this dynamic will be there, that would make the right-hand side for Liverpool very, very, very dangerous. And not only does it make the right-hand side very dangerous with those two players, it allows Salah to basically play as a striker and to get into more influential positions and to get into more dangerous positions in the final third and in more central areas, because you have Trent and Maya there carrying the load of the build-up play on that right-hand side, while Lovren Maya also has the defensive capabilities and is tenacious enough and has the work rate to drop back and to cover for Trent and to act as that midfield shuttler when they don't have possession and are in transition. I think this makes so much sense. I think it makes so much sense. In possession, very technically capable, has the ability to break a game open through a pass in between the lines or taking a man on or getting that cross into the box, whilst also being very tenacious and very workmanlike out of possession. I flagged it 5 months ago, and he's only improved leaps and bounds since then. How he hasn't been picked up is beyond me. He's going to turn 25 very soon. He's going to be in the prime of his career. I think Lovren Maya to Liverpool is the perfect signing. He'll complement Jude Bellingham perfectly if both of them get it over the line. I think those two signings in particular will transform Liverpool's midfield. Because that's arguably the area of the pitch where they need transformation the most. They've gone and revitalised that attacking that front six with Gakpo, Nunes, and Diaz all coming in within the last 12 months. They've gone and got those three players to rejuvenise and revitalise that front six, well, that front three, which is now they've got 6 players in that position. That defence, in my opinion, is fine. I think maybe some right back depth, but apart from that, they're all good. The midfield needs rejuvenation. The midfield needs an injection of energy that can transform it and can make them a different prospect to play against. Bellingham, which is all but confirmed in my opinion, and Lovren are the 2 players Liverpool need to get. If they get them both in January, I don't think they will, but if they do, then they're going to be very dangerous in the back end of the season. And in my opinion, I would actually prioritise Maya over Bellingham in January purely because of the gettability factor. Lovren is so much more feasible right now than Jude Bellingham. So I would go and get Maya right now, put him in the squad, have that in the bank already, and then go to Bellingham and say, hey, we can't afford you right now, but we want you to play in the summer, etc., etc., etc. That's how I would do it. That is how I would do it. And if you bring up Lovren Mayer's FB ref here, I would challenge you to find a Liverpool midfielder that has the attacking stats that Lovren Mayer has. Lovren Mayer. So for those who are listening, I apologise. This has been quite a pretty intense visual podcast, which is an oxymoron. I'm aware. But if I were to just describe it to you, basically Lovren Mayer is very, very good offensively. Very, very good offensively. And while his defensive stats don't exactly paint a massive picture, let's not forget that he's practically a midfield number 8 that is being compared against proper defensive midfielders. So take those, once again, as always, take these with a grain of salt and take these with a pinch of salt. I'm not always right. These don't always tell the full story. This is just a good guide, in my opinion, to kind of steer people in the right direction as to what they could expect from a player. Those defensive stats, once again, he's being compared to actual defensive midfielders. So Lovren Mayer is being compared to Casemiro when it comes to tackles or interceptions. Hence why it's probably not. It probably doesn't flatter him, these stats. But if I just want to go to Liverpool, and I want to look at some of their players and look at goal. Here we go. Goal and shot creation. Goal and shot creation. Here we go. Come on. Are we loading? Here we go. Okay. Goal creating actions. So, here we go. Why can't I find it? Okay. Oh no, this is by game. All right. Okay. Anyway, I'll get it. I'll try and fill time once I get to it. But actually, I'll just do it on my laptop. It's easier. Anyway, so what what Lovren Mayer here. I'm just trying to bring up the comparison between. Apologies if the frame rate slightly drops for this bit. But what I'm trying to compare is where Lovren Mayer would compare to other Liverpool players in terms of goal creating chances and actually creating from midfield, right? So if we bring up Liverpool Liverpool's players in terms of goal creating actions, right? Goal creating actions for Liverpool, the highest midfielder with a goal creating actions per 90 that's actually played a substantial amount of minutes is Harvey Elliott with 4 shot creating actions per 90, I should say. 4 shot creating actions per 90. Harvey Elliott, who's played a substantial amount of minutes, and really he's actually been playing as he's been playing in that front three for some of the period as well. He's got 4 shot creating actions per 90. Lovren Mayer immediately has 4.49. So that straight away shows that he has far better shot creating actions and can actually create more from a midfield position already. He would be Liverpool's top. He would be Liverpool's top shot creator from midfield throughout the last season, right? Throughout the last calendar year. Granted, they're 2 different substratas or 2 different kind of, I don't know. I didn't do maths. I don't know what the exact term is, but Harvey Elliott's was from this season. Myers was from the last calendar year. I granted that, of course, is 2 different sets of data, but the story still remains the same. If Lovren Mayer comes into this Liverpool team, he will probably be their best shot creator from midfield. That immediately gives him a different dynamic, like I said. And not only that, but if we look at the dribbles completed, touches in the attacking penalty area, and progressive passes received, this shows that Liverpool's game isn't built like City's game, where it needs to be intrinsic one-touch passing that can break in between the lines and etc. Pass and move, tiki-taka. It's high octane, getting past your man, intense press, higher tempo, etc. These progressive passes received and the touches in the attacking penalty area say to me, at least, that Maya has the ability to think quickly and to get into positions where he can receive the ball both at feet and with his stride, right? The fact that he has 5.38 progressive passes received shows that when he plays on the right-hand side of a midfield three or even as a right winger, he gets into positions where he can receive the ball and impact in attacking areas. Hence the 2.73 touches in the attacking penalty area per 90, right? 93rd percentile. And if we bring up his average positions here, it's kind of almost what it's kind of what I said before in terms of that he occupies our right half space quite a lot. But you can see here he does do some defensive work as well. He's not an all out attacking right-sided midfielder. He's right-sided central midfielder, I should say. He's almost like a central midfielder. Like if I were to use a Football Manager term. If I were to relate this to Football Manager, he's like a centre mid on attack. That's what he's like. He traditionally occupies normal central midfield positions, but he does have that emphasis and that impotence to go forward, to get past the man, to influence in the final third. I think Maya will be a star for Liverpool if he can get across the line. He has had a career where he hasn't had that break yet. So he's just waiting for that break to announce himself on the world stage. He didn't really blow everyone out of the water at the World Cup. If you watch Croatia's games, he played okay. He was fine for Croatia. I mean, I know you really should take SofaScore's ratings. SofaScore's ratings with a grain of salt, of course. But yeah, he played 4 games for Croatia he played 4 games for Croatia he played 6 games. Yeah, six games for Croatia at the World Cup, and he was just fine. He scored 1 goal against Canada in that 4-1 win, but he was okay in those games. You can't really say anything more or anything less. He was just okay, and that is someone who will just be that for Liverpool. He'll be a good player for Liverpool. He's not going to break records. He's not going to be their best player. Because if you're going to compare him or if you're going to attribute that to anyone, it's going to be Bellingham, right? Maya will come in and will be Naby Keita, but plus 1 or 2 points, in a sense. If Naby Keita's a 7 out of 10, Maya will be a 9 out of 10. If Naby Keita's a 5 out of 10, Maya will be a 7 out of 10. That type of thing. Maya will come in and will just be a better version of Naby Keita, which I agree isn't necessarily that hard. But he'll come in on the right-hand side, do a more than capable job, will be content with sitting on the bench, provides that depth, 25 years old, so he's experienced. He won't think about it as his career being stunted, because that would be his best move, like his career peak move. Yeah, I think Lovren Maya is the guy for Liverpool, in my opinion. And I flagged it 5 months ago, and I'll flag it again until someone picks him up, because I think he's a star. I think he's a superstar. So, yeah, Lovren Maya for Liverpool. It's quite ironic that 5 months on, Liverpool still need the same player, and the same player I've said is the player that the Liverpool still need the same player. So, still need the same type of player, I should say. That's it. 52 minutes. Quite a long episode, this one already. Still got 3 clubs to do. Don't think I'll be speaking about Chelsea, by the way. Unless I get 3 clubs done in under 8 minutes. I think this will just be the episode for today, covering the big 6 transfers. Anyway, as I take a sip of my water because my throat's a bit fucked. But let's move on. Try not to swear. Try to minimise the swearing. Okay, let's move on. We've got 3 London clubs left. Quite fitting that we left it like this. And let's move up the table. Let's move from bottom to top in terms of the London clubs. And I hate to say it, but let's start with my team, Chelsea. Yeah, so I just need to focus on the signing. This isn't the part where I rant. Maybe they'll come later on, depending on. But no, let's look at Chelsea. Let's try to look at it objectively. Now, Chelsea are in a very, very tricky position. Now, what Chelsea are gonna do this transfer window? Who knows? Are they gonna go out and splash the cash on someone like a Rafael Leao? Who knows? But in my opinion, and I'm just gonna say this, and this of course will link to why I think Chelsea should sign. Chelsea are a team that are filled with so many egos, it's unbelievable. You have about 7 or 8 players who want to be the best. You have a Aubameyang who wants to be the number one guy. You have Havertz who wants to be the number one guy. You have Ziyech who wants to be the number one guy. You've got Nkunku coming in who's going to want to be the number one guy. You've got Mount who's asking for 300 grand a week. You've got so many players who are asking for so much and who are demanding so much because they think so highly of themselves, right? And then you've got those players, but then you've also got Amari Hutchinson, Lewis Hall. You've got these kids, Chukwuemeka. You've got these kids. The gap in terms of dynamics of the squad is so far apart. It's so far apart. I can probably list maybe 3 or 4 players in the squad that are in between that aren't superstars, in massive quotation marks, but aren't kids. I would say maybe Aspilicueta is one of them. I would say maybe Cucurella's another one. I would say maybe, Jorginho thinks he's a superstar. Kovacic is probably Chelsea's best player this season. Apart from that, Broja, he's injured. Loftus-Cheek, Gallagher, he thinks he's better than what he is, in my opinion. The gap in the dynamics of the squad is too drastic. So you need to bring a player in the squad who will just do a job. No fuss, not expensive, doesn't have an ego, will be content to sit on the bench, just does his job. Now, it would be a shame. I'll tell you who Chelsea could really use right now. A certain French World Cup winning striker that is tearing it apart in Serie A, but I can't quite put my finger on who that might be. He played for Arsenal for quite a long period of time when AC Milan is rejuvenising his career. I can't quite think of the guy, but so I've gone with someone different, and I've gone with a player who I don't think a lot of people will know of. Yes, I've slightly gone for this player because he's tearing it apart in my Football Manager save at the moment, but I have he's a player which I think fits the profile of player Chelsea need, especially for both the short term and for the long term, very well. He's a player that plays for SC Freiburg in Germany, who currently sits second in the Bundesliga, and that is Michal Gregoric. Now, he's a striker. Obviously, he's a striker, right? So that goes back to what I also think Chelsea need. I was going to say centre-back. They got Badiashile. I was going to say midfielder. They're all but going to get Enzo Fernandez. So they left me with striker, right? Okay, Okay, so with what Chelsea need in terms of I've got the dynamics under wraps. That's why I think Chelsea need this player in terms of dynamics wise and striker wise. Broja's injured for a year. Aubameyang shit. Havertz isn't a striker. Nor is Nkunku. So we need a striker. We need a striker. They need a striker. I'm trying to remain impartial. Chelsea need a striker. Now, what Gregoric offers. Now, a lot of people won't know him, so I'll give you some background information on the guy. He's 6 foot. He's got 6 goals and 3 assists in 15 games. He's 28 years old. He's left-footed. He's I think 193 centimeters. Can play both as a 9 and also as a 10/inside forwards on either side. So that suits that 3 at the back system that Potter likes to occupy at times. And he is just. He's just good enough. Like, that's what Chelsea need. They just need someone who's good enough that won't crack up a fuss. He'll come in, if Chelsea get him in this transfer window, he'll come in for 6 months in the back end of the season and just do a job. He'll do a job. He'll come in, he'll score a goal every other game, will assist a goal every other game, and will just come in and do a job, which doesn't sound glamorous, but Chelsea have 11 players on the pitch that aren't doing their jobs. So if Chelsea can bring someone in who will do their job, that's a great start. He's technically capable enough to be both a 10 and a 9. Like I said, he has great finishing capabilities to be a 9. Like I said, 6 goals and 3 assists in 15 games so far this season is a pretty good record for a team that doesn't dominate games. Granted, Freiburg is second in the Bundesliga, but they're not the Bayern Munichs of the world, right? He's got the physical presence enough to worry defenders both in the air and on the ground, can drop deep, can pick up the ball, can carry the ball, and can create as well. His contract is expiring as well, I do believe, so it could be a slightly shrewd signing in a sense they could pick him up for very cheap. This wouldn't cost Chelsea more than 20-25 million at the absolute maximum, and I just think it's a signing that Chelsea, unassuming signing that they just need to get done, because it seems like every signing Chelsea has got is either a prodigy 18-year-old who's going to be the best player in the world in 5 years, so Chelsea can have 11 Ballon d'Or winners in 5 years, or it's a 28-year-old or a 24, 25, 26, 27-year-old best player in the world in their position, in quotation marks, £450 million a week, £6 million signing on fee, like £400 million transfer fee, just this ridiculous, ludicrous, lucrative contracts for lucrative money for big, high potential, high profile players. You don't win leagues with 11 superstars, you just need players who are going to do their role. Gregoric will come into this side and just do his job, which is something, like I said, Chelsea have just lost 4-0 to Man City. And Chelsea don't have players who are going to do their job. The gap between a bunch of 18-year-olds, a bunch of kids, and a bunch of people who think they're superstars is too big. The dynamic in the squad is too big. You need to come in, you need players to come into the squad and just humble everyone. I think a player like Gregoric will come in and will do his job, and in turn will just humble everyone. A bumman will look at him and think, who's this guy coming in for £15 million, earning 25k a week, that's starting above me, and that's scoring goals? Oh, wait, he's actually doing his job. He's got his head down in training, he's improving standards, he's doing his job, he's just getting the job done. And then the 18-year-old's going to look at him, are going to look at a player like Gregoric and say, oh yeah, he's not flashy, he's not worth 100 million, he's not earning 300k a week, but he's starting, he's scoring, he's assisting, he's doing his job, the boss likes him, and he's a good player. Someone like Gregoric, I've mentioned Gregoric because I just think value for money rise, he could be one of the better players in this kind of bracket of players, but unless Chelsea want to ride off the season and just play kids and just sign a bunch of 18-year-olds, who knows? But yeah, I think someone like a Michael Gregoric will come in and do a more than fine job for Chelsea. If we bring up his FB ref here, I mean, my eyes immediately go to those defensive numbers. Once again, just a no nonsense, no fuss, job done footballer. Elite defensive numbers. Brilliant tackles, interceptions, block clearances, aerials 1, non-penalty goals per 90 of 0.57, which is ranks in the 88th percentile. He's a more than capable finisher, and I don't know who's Chelsea's top goal scorer this season. It's probably I actually have no idea who's Chelsea's top goal scorer this season. I can guarantee you, if it's above 5 goals, I would be surprised. I would be shocked. Yep, it's Kai Havertz with 4 goals. Gregoric scored 6 in a team that has far less superstars than Chelsea. Once again, in massive quotations. Bring up his average positions here. Like I said, can drop in, play a 10, sticks relatively centrally. Like I said, can play on the left if needed, but can just drop into the hole, pick up the ball, use his physical presence to hold it up and give it off to slightly more talented footballers. Once again, in quotation marks, because I emphasise this a lot. Chelsea's talented footballers aren't talented. They all suck. If we remember his average positions again, he like I said, hold up the ball and can drop into the 10, use his technical ability to create that way, whilst also being a very good finisher in the box, can be a poacher, good positioning. I just think he's a signing that Chelsea need. I'm slightly harsh on the players because I don't think all of them suck. I think a lot of them do. But they just need a player who is just no fuss, do his job, versatile, and just does his job. I'm putting a lot of emphasis on someone doing their job, which really should be the minimum expectation for footballers at the professional level. But Chelsea have players who just don't do their job. They just don't do it. I think Thiago Silva, Kovacic, and Reece James before he was injured are the 3 players this season that can hold their head high. in my opinion, for Chelsea. And they're the three players who, Reece James is, I mean, otherworldly how good he is. But Kovacic is just a hard worker. Out of possession, in possession, hard worker, doesn't stop. I know, apparently he didn't clap the fans off at the Etihad the other day, or this morning, for when I'm recording it, which is disappointing, but still. Hardworking, doesn't stop, good trainer by all accounts, that type of player. And then Thiago Silva, ultimate professional. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree here. You need to bring professionals. Stop bringing in egomaniacal, flair, jewel in the crown, mercurial players, because it doesn't work. Look at Potter, and look at that side. Look at the Brighton side that he had. Look at the Brighton side that Potter had. Right? Where are the superstars? Where are the superstars? There's none. And he was getting them very good finishes in the league, playing very good football, because it was just 11 people who did their job, who played a role and did it well. Focused on their role and did it well. Gregoric will come in and do that in abundance. That's why I think Chelsea should go and get him. And also it helps that they've signed a centre-back, which they need, and they're probably going to sign a midfielder as well. But 127 million for Enzo Fernandez is ridiculous as well, by the way, just quietly. But anyway. It's one of those things, right, where I'm not a football coach, so I can say all I want, and I can say, yeah, Chelsea need this, this, and this, but Potter could be like, no, I want Enzo Fernandez, I want Rafael Leao, I want Kvaratskhelia from Napoli, or I want Osimhen, or I want all these players. He's just a fine stopgap who, for 6 months, will do a job, and then next year, once Chelsea sign an actual good striker who'll do his job as well, he'll be on the bench, play cup games, play less meaningful Prem games, and will just be a fine Chelsea player. He'll be like Divock Origi. I think that's a very good comparison. He'll be Chelsea's Divock Origi after this season. If they get him, come off the bench, do a job, bang. That's all you need. Okay. Let's move on to what other clubs next? Arsenal, Tottenham. Let's go. Oh yeah, I said we'll move up. So let's go to Tottenham. And where do we start with Spurs? Now, Spurs are in a position where they probably need a player in every position. I don't think their centre-halves as a whole are entirely good enough. I don't think their midfield as a whole is entirely good enough. I don't think their front line as a whole is entirely good enough, although that's probably the area where they don't need it as much, in terms of if everyone's fit and firing, etc. But I was looking at the team, and I was looking at, this is one of the reasons why I've gone with other players for other teams. I was looking at the January window, and what are you going to get in January in comparison to in the summer transfer window, right? In the summer transfer window, it's pretty much free reign on anyone you want. Whereas January, the options are very limited. So if Chelsea, we'll just use Tottenham, right? Because we're going to speak about them. If Tottenham, I'm not saying they do need this, but I'm just using this as an example. If Tottenham needed a striker really badly, like they had no striker, but they also needed, actually maybe not really bad, but if Tottenham needed a striker, like that was their top priority, and they needed a world-class striker, but they also needed a central midfielder that's a good but not great midfielder that can just get the job done. In January, you're more likely to find a player to fit that centre midfield mould rather than the striker mould, because they're just not that available in January. So this moves on to who I think Tottenham should buy. And I think when we look at the importance of players, and we look at the way the coach, let's just assume Conte stays, when we look at the way that Conte can transform players, it's a lot. Conte has shown that he can take bad wing-backs and turn them very good. He turned Victor Moses and Marcus Alonso into the best wing-back duo in the world, right? Granted, he is working with Emerson Royale, who... and he just is not playing Jet Spence for whatever reason. So that's why I've gone with right wing back over any other position, because I think the other positions that they do need are more important to the system meaning when they do buy a centre mid, for example, they need to go out and get the best. And I don't think the best is available. That's why I think you can get away with getting a slightly less good right wing back, which will then transform into a very good right wing back because it's not as crucial a position as a central midfielder, if you get me. Okay. Which I know is very arbitrary, but it kind of works. Okay. So I was looking at right wing backs, and once again, like I said with Chelsea, Tottenham just need a right wing back that will do his job. Nothing flashy, nothing extraordinary. Just will come in and do his job. Has potential to grow and to change into the Antonio Conte system, which is something that they really do need. But someone who can come in, do a job, but can also improve with Conte and change with Conte, assuming he stays. Now, I hadn't really heard of this player much until I was looking into who Tottenham should sign. I started this one probably put me into a rabbit hole the most in looking at right wing backs, but I've gone with Vanderson. I assume that's how you pronounce his name, or Wanderson, from Monaco. Now, background information for a lot of people who probably haven't heard of him. He's a attacking right wing back. He's 21 years old, currently playing for Monaco, like I said, and he is a player that naturally has a lot of attacking, maybe not flair, but has a lot of attacking impotence naturally. But because he's been playing as a traditional right back for Monaco, he's able to hold his own without the ball as well, and defensively he's more than capable. So, if we just go let's go straight into some FB ref, shall we? Where are we here? Vanderson. It's Vanderson, Vanderson. I'm pretty sure that's how you spell it. Anyway, unless I spelled it wrong on my run sheet. But he's currently in Monaco. He came from Grêmio. From Grêmio in Brazil. I think he's only been one of the other players in this list that has only been at Monaco, that has only been in his most recent club for one calendar year. But I think he should be. Once again, if Tottenham come calling, good wages, good money, I don't think you can turn them down. Anyway, let's go to some average positions first. Actually, let's touch on the FB ref. There you go, hints for the average positions. Let's touch on some FB ref. So so if we compare him to fullbacks, what we could see immediately is that he's very, very good defensively. Defensively, he's very good. That's probably his best. It's probably his best probably his best asset is his defensive ability, but that doesn't mean that he's shit offensively. Offensively, he's more than capable. Like we said, with passes completed, progressive passes, dribbles completed, touches in the attacking penalty area, and progressive passes received, he's in the upper echelons of fullbacks in Europe's top 5 leagues. Meaning that he is good offensively as well. Can get into good positions, can really occupy dangerous areas on that right hand side. Likes to maintain the width, likes to maintain the depth as well with his positioning. Likes to maintain the depth as well, both defensively and defensively, likes to get up and down all day. So someone like Vanderson who come in and be defensively very solid for Spurs, give them that extra layer of security, because I think they've conceded the first goal in I think it's the last 7 or 8 games or something along those lines. They've conceded the first goal. So bringing someone in who is just solid defensively, first and foremost, solid defensively, and then also has the ability of just playing football, has comfortable on the ball. I know the pass complete statistic isn't exactly a flattering statistic by any means, but trust me, he's just comfortable on the ball. Nothing extraordinary, nothing marvelous. But if you give him 6 months to kind of embed himself into the Tottenham system, if you give him a pre-season and a proper training regime under Conte to improve his physicality, to improve his technical ability, I think he'll be a very good player for Spurs in the coming years, because he's got that defensive base, which is arguably harder to teach. It's harder to teach defensiveness and defensive nature, and it's harder to teach a defensive nature than it is an offensive nature, because naturally footballers want to get onto the ball, want to shoot, want to score goals, etc. So that kind of comes naturally to a lot of players, more naturally in a sense. Because he's got that defensive mindedness already instilled into him, and that is probably his best asset right now. The offensive nature will come to once Conte gets a hold of him, and once he can breed into this Tottenham system, he will understand the way that they want to play. He'll understand the positions that he needs to get into, and then he'll just be a very, very solid player. If we look at the average positions here, it's a right wing back. It's a right back. He can come inside as well to create slightly more central overloads if they want him to, or if they want to maybe push Kulusevski on the right hand side to push really wide and maintain width with him in the final third. He can come inside and be a slightly more inverted wing back. But I just think he's fine. He's just a solid, young, high potential player. Currently at Monaco, so I don't know how much Monaco will want to get for him, probably like 100 million, knowing them. But no, he should be relatively affordable in the grand scheme of things, and should just come in and do a job for Tottenham, which is something that they desperately need, because Emerson Royale is not that great. So I don't know exactly what their other right back stocks are. Forgive me if I forget, but in the cup against Portsmouth, they started Emerson Royale as a right wing back. They won 4-0 against Palace, which was great. They started Doherty at right wing back as well. Doherty's not that great, let's be honest. If Tottenham want to get into the Champions League and challenge for Premier League trophies, you cannot have Matt Doherty as a right wing back. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You just can't do that. That's something that's not. Nah, you can't do that. I think that's probably an avenue where they need to improve. Van der Sar will come in and do a job, in my opinion. Okay. Yeah, and he should be available for relatively cheap. Not cheap as chips, not bargain base. I don't know how much you're going to want for him. I don't know what someone like a SofaScore has him rate. I don't know what someone like a SofaScore has him valued at. He went for 11 mil. 11 million euros this time last year. So, as in 2022. So, it wouldn't be that expensive. Put it that way. Okay, let's go. Let's move on. Let's finish things up with the team at the top of the table. Arsenal. Now, where do we go? Where do we go with Arsenal here? Because it's very interesting. Very interesting the way that they are going to approach the second half of the season, because their momentum. I spoke about it last week. So if you want to hear my full thoughts on Arsenal, go back to last week's episode. I spoke about them at depth, or in depth, I should say. So when we just look at what they need, it's blatantly obvious, in my opinion. I think when you look at what Arsenal need, you need to look at the weakest areas in terms of depth. It's striker and it's centre mid for me. Now, striker is potentially a more pressing issue right now, because of course the absence of Gabriel Jesus, Eddie Nketiah is your next striker who's been playing, and after that I don't really know who they've got. Of course, they could move Martinelli up there and maybe get Fabio Vieira involved somehow, or they could move Fabio Vieira to play as like a false nine, maybe, if they want to do that. But if we look at what they at the bench, let's look at the bench of the Arsenal game, of the Brighton game, I should say. They've got no backup striker. Maybe Marquinhos. Maybe, I doubt it. I mean, he's played one game for them in the FA in the League Cup, and he played on the right. So he isn't a striker. They don't have a backup striker. However, I think if Eddie Nketiah gets injured, I think they can get away with it playing Martinelli up front a little bit more than what they could if Granit Xhaka or Thomas Partey get injured. If Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey get injured for a month, 2 months, I just don't see El Neni and Lokonga covering enough for them. And I love El Neni. I think he's great. I really do. I just love the idea of Mohamed El Neni, and I just love that he's stuck around, and he potentially at the end of the season could get a Premier League medallion, a Premier League winners medal around his neck. But Lokonga as well, I just think he's maybe 2 or 3 years away. So when I was looking at midfielders for Arsenal to get, I was like, okay, they need someone who can both sit like Partey and move slightly further forward. Like Xhaka, not overly expensive because I don't think they're going to break the bank this January transfer window, and is willing to take that step up in his career. That has experience in big games, that has experience around big players, and it fell to one man who I actually thought of this morning. So I had to change my my run sheet a little bit, but I've gone with the Bayer Leverkusen defensive / central midfielder Ezequiel Palacios. Now, a striker is a main issue for them as well. I 100% agree, but I just think a midfielder, if Xhaka or Partey go down, like I said, they're going to be well and truly stuffed. So Ezequiel Palacios from Bayer Leverkusen is a good, cheap option that has proven himself to be more than capable at elite European level, can play the both Partey and Xhaka role very well, versatile both with the ball and without the ball. He's physically capable to handle it in the Premier League, still 24 years old, was in that Argentinian squad that won the World Cup, so he's been around the big players in high pressure scenarios. So in the crunch end of this Premier League campaign, he'll understand how to handle these big games, how to handle the clutch moments and the high pressure games. I just think he could come in and be a very, very shrewd signing. Of course, when I think of January transfer window, midfield signings for Arsenal, my mind goes back to the Swedish magician that was Kim Kallström. So hopefully Palacios can be slightly better than him. But if we move to, let's start with his FB ref. Actually, let's start with his average positions. If I could speak, that'd be great. Let's start with his average positions. What you see here is exactly what I was speaking about in terms of he can do both. He can sit like Thomas Partey, but he can move forward like Granit Xhaka. He can be that more aggressive defensive midfielder, but he can also sit. And I think this translates brilliantly over with his stats. Like I said, or like this shows, nothing exceptional. Nothing exceptional by any means. However, he's got defensively tackles, 3.2 tackles, 1 per 90, ranking the 93rd percentile of midfielders, 1.60 interceptions and 1.60 blocks, ranking the 85th and 83rd percentile respectively, whilst also having 5.46 progressive passes and 65.55 passes attempted per 90. Both ranking in the 91st and 85th percentile respectively. What this shows is that he can get onto the ball in deep areas. Now, what Thomas Partey is for Arsenal, right? Is that he's not only, as my camera is struggling to focus. Here we go. What is Thomas Partey for Arsenal? Not only is Thomas Partey a defensive destroyer that puts out spot fires, that makes sure that there's no easy chances going through to the defence. He's also their first layer of attack. He's also very comfortable on the ball in order to recycle possession, be that fulcrum in midfield to just pass it around, triangles with the centre-backs, with the full-backs, moving it slightly further forward with Xhaka and playing those progressive passes, right? I think, is that not what these stats show? A player that is brilliant defensively, willing to stick a foot in, willing to get down and dirty into tackles and really to put his foot in, but is also capable enough to pick up the ball, spray it around comfortably on the ball, and just very comfortable in possession. Those 0.22 non-penalty goals per 90, ranking the 92nd percentile. Once again, grain of salt, of course, but that shows that he is a little bit of a goal threat if he was to play in that Xhaka role and to break slightly further forward. He won't be overly cheap in this transfer window by any means, but he won't be extremely expensive as well. He won't be extremely expensive. He should go into this Arsenal team and give them that extra layer of security that they do need, that they really need. And what only does this do is that it actually gives them. I know he's not a 10. He's definitely not a 10. He's more of a 6 than he is a 10. I would say he's a box-to-box midfielder, but I would say that he's a defensive box-to-box midfielder, if we're going to be very pedantic about it. I just think that he has the ability to play both the Xhaka and Partey role, which gives the license for Odegaard and the license for those attacking players to just be a little bit more free. I know it's probably 1%, 2% max, but it could just give him that extra bit of impotence to just be a little bit more free and be a little bit more expressive going forward, and to get the best out of their abilities. I just think Palacios, bring up his average positions. Look, it just solid. The word that springs to my mind, solid. No fuss, no dramas, no carrying on, no flamboyance about it, no flashiness. Solid. Was in the Argentinian squad, didn't play a massive part in it by any means, but just solid. So yeah, I think for Arsenal, Ezequiel Palacios is the guy for them. Whether or not they go for a centre mid, or whether or not they value a striker over a centre mid, who knows? Either or, either or, it's going to be a very interesting way to see what they value. I think that's going to be very interesting to see what Mikel Arteta values more in his squad, the striker position or the centre mid position, because I know they're in slightly different positions where they have their star number 9 out and they don't have their star midfielder out. But I just feel if Arsenal get an injury in midfield, it's going to hurt them a lot more than since they've got the injury up front, if that makes sense. I don't know exactly on the stats. Let me know in the comments if possible. But have Arsenal started a Premier League game this season without Xhaka or Partey? Has that been their midfield double pivot for the entire season? I can't remember games where they haven't started, to be honest. Both players have been arguably their top 5 players this season. Xhaka's reinvented himself. Partey's arguably one of the best defensive midfielders in the league. I just think Ezequiel Palacios is the guy to give him that extra bit of security and to give him that rotation as well. Because I wouldn't buy Palacios and just wait until Xhaka or Partey get injured for him to play. I would bring Palacios in and play him ahead of Xhaka for a game. Give Xhaka a break. Give him the week off. Let him go on holiday. Give Partey the week off, right? Just let these players rest. Let them rejuvenise. Let them revitalise for the back end of the season, which is going to be very intense, very high pressure, and that's a positions where Palacios has been involved in for quite a while. I mean, is there any higher pressure than the World Cup, right? He was in that squad. He knows what it's about. He knows how to get the job done. Goethe didn't play, but he's been around players who have played in the biggest game of all. So that's why I think Arsenal should go and get Ezequiel Palacios for Bayer Leverkusen. Not a star by any means, like I said, but a player that will just get the job done. Okay, we're done that. That's an hour and 25 minutes for that. We're not going to speak about Chelsea, unfortunately. Actually, fortunately, we're gonna. Although it would be funny if I did, but we're not, because this podcast will be 4 hours long. So unless I don't think anyone wants to say that. So let's move on. Let's move on to the A-League before we go into who went into footed. I actually haven't written down who went into footed. So that's great preparation by me. That is unbelievable preparation by me. Hopefully I can think of it on the fly. Anyway, let's speak on the A-League. The big news that have come out of this week is that Nani has done his ACL, which is just shit. However, before that, I want to speak on Adam Lafondra and Steve Corica. Firstly, it has to be Steve Corica's, Steve Corica's on borrowed time, right? Surely. That team is so far better than what they have been producing this season. He's won a couple of leagues based off what Graham Arnold has done. It's slow regression. He has slowly regressed ever since he's took over. It's pretty simple the way that it's gone about things, right? It's pretty simple in my opinion. Graham Arnold built that team that Corica was winning premierships with, and as soon as Corica has got his hands and has got his DNA all over this squad, it's been slow regression. Slow regression. And he has to be on borrowed times. I mean, I can't see him surviving to the end of the season if it keeps going, to be honest. So it'll be interesting to see who takes over that job, because Sydney should be one of the powerhouses of the league, and to see where they are now is quite interesting. I think they're in a very different position to the way maybe Victory are. I think it's different, but still, they played their full strength team against Wellington and they still lost, right? Maybe bar Joe Lowley, right? It was still a full strength team, so. That's quite interesting. He has to be on borrowed times, in my opinion. But, speaking on that game against Wellington, Steve Corica actually had the nerve to blame the refs. It was against Wellington, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Ollie Sale. Yeah. I just had to make sure I didn't make a fool of myself. But he actually had the nerve of blaming the refs when they got 2 penalties back to back and Lafondra missed both. He actually had the nerve to he had the nerve. You know what? He's who he's gonna be the guy who I say who went into footy this week. He's gonna be the winner of that category of that segment. But yeah, the nerve on ya, honestly. Although Lafondra missing 2 penalties is hilarious. It's actually hilarious. I don't think you can get any funnier than that, to be honest. The second one, did he sky the second one, or did he miss it? Like, did he put it wide? Because there's some angles where it looks like he skied it, and there's some angles where it looks like he's put it so far wide. But regardless, I think it's hilarious regardless. It was a 1-0 loss, and funny, very hilarious in my opinion. But something that isn't funny is Nani. Now, I want to wrap this up quickly because I don't want this podcast to be too long. But I say that as it's going to tick over the 90-minute mark. But I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand what's wrong with this league. This league's cursed. This league is genuinely cursed. It is genuinely cursed. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, how the fuck? Like, how? How can this league get... How can it be kicked in the dick again? I don't get it. Like, not only is this Nani injury terrible for Victory, but it's just terrible for the league. It's another kick to the gut. Another kick to the gut, which the A-League can't afford. Nani is the most high-profile marquee the league has had in a long, long time. It's in the best interest of not only Victory, but for every single club in the league, that he maintains his fitness and that he plays every single game. Because people come to games just to see the best players and just to see someone like Nani. Granted, he hadn't hit the ground running. Granted, he wasn't playing the best football and he wasn't playing to the potential that a lot of people thought he could. But I mean, it's just so shattering for the league. It's another unfortunate thing that the league just doesn't need. The league doesn't need. They've already had Austin leave through mutual termination because he wants to go back home. And now Nani is out for at least 12 months. Won't be back till at least halfway through next season. If he doesn't retire by then or leave by mutual termination, I should say. It's just so shattering. It is just so shattering. And... I'll tell you what hurts. I'll tell you what hurts even more about this. This is what hurts even more. It gives another reason for people to not care about the league. That's what hurts. It doesn't hurt me the most because I'm a Victory supporter. I couldn't care less, to be honest. It just because I would rather see the league thrive than Victory thrive. I don't know. It's like. It's another thing. It's another way for other people to... It's another excuse for other people to laugh at the league. It's another excuse for other people to laugh at people who care about the league. It's another excuse for people to... It's another excuse for people to stop care. It's another excuse for people to stop caring about the league, which is the worst thing about it. Obviously, Nani's a great player and we want him to be at full fitness. We want him scoring goals, assisting goals, and being the player that he should be, right? Granted, he hasn't had the best of starts, but it's just another kick to the dick. Like another punch to the sternum, which the league can't afford, which is the worst thing about it. Anyway, let's move on. Let's finish things up with Who Went Into Footed. Basically, if you haven't listened to this podcast before, Who Went Into Footed is basically the only segment on this podcast where we go through a player, coach, organisation, team, whoever who did something daft, who did something a bit stupid. And like I said, Steve Corica, congratulations. You're an idiot. How can you blame the refs? I don't get it. I just don't get it. Anyway, I don't get it. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to the preview of the week. What's going on? Who's going to play who? Oxford City versus Arsenal. in the FA Cup. That's quite cool. EFL Cup quarterfinal action, which is all right. Chelsea versus Fulham at Fulham, so I can't wait for Chelsea to lose 6-0 in that game. I said what was it? Aggregate 15-0 this time last week with Chelsea versus City twice in 4 days, whatever it was. It was 5-0 in aggregate, so I was a third right. Any big games? Melbourne Derby, Manchester Derby. Manchester Derby, which is quite Manchester Derby and North London Derby. That's insane. Imagine if Spurs can win and knock Arsenal off their perch. That'll be interesting. And let's say if United win and if United and Spurs both win, if United and Arsenal both win, it's Arsenal's title to lose. Officially, Arsenal's title to lose. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But yes, thank you all very much for watching another episode of Two Foot Tackle Podcast. The longest podcast I've ever done. I'm 90% sure. Definitely the longest solo podcast I've ever done by a country mile. But there you go. Just giving the fans what they want. If you watch this in blocks, in segments, I definitely don't. I don't blame you for it. I didn't think this podcast would be an hour and a half. I actually wrote down, I'm going to speak about Chelsea if I've got enough time, because I didn't think I'd actually speak for long enough about the players, but I spoke for far too long. I apologise. I got carried away. But yeah. If you've stuck around in one full sweep for the end of this podcast, I value you and I applaud you immensely. It's a pretty good effort to stick through an hour and a half of me talking nonsense. But yeah, thank you for watching. All love and support in this podcast will mean the world. See you guys next week, where we probably won't speak for an hour and a half, but we'll speak about a potential Premier League title race being all but over this time next week, which can't wait to see. Can't wait to speak about that and see where we are in 7 days' time. But yes, thank you all very much for watching. Speak to you guys next week. See you soon and goodbye. Start the music. Oh, the music's not gone. Okay, this has been a calamity of a final. It's been a calamity of a final. Here we go. So now I'm coming back. No, I'm gone. Okay, I'm just gonna play the music and I'm just gonna play the music and Are we done? I'm still here. There we go. Okay, goodbye.